A routine flight turned into a nightmare just 34 seconds after takeoff. How does a modern Boeing 787 crash so fast? Why were both engines dead almost instantly? Was it bad fuel, a total electrical failure, or something even worse? Why didn't the safety systems alert the pilots? And how was a plane with a troubled past still flying? A Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, operating as Air India Flight AI-171, lifted off from Ahmedabad's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport at exactly 1:38:44 p.m. It was supposed to be a routine international flight to London, carrying 242 people, 230 passengers, 10 crew members, and 2 experienced pilots. But within just 34 seconds, something went horribly wrong. At only 625 feet above the ground, the aircraft stopped climbing. At 1:39:13 p.m., the aircraft crashed into a college hostel canteen, just 1.5 kilometers from the runway. What followed was a horrific tragedy. A total of 270 lives were lost, 241 from the plane, and 29 students who were on the ground. The time couldn't have been worse. It was lunch hour, and about 35 students were in the canteen when the crash happened. The blast was so strong it felt like an earthquake. Flames and smoke rushed through the building. Some students tried to escape by jumping out of windows. Only one person survived the crash, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, who had been sitting in seat 11A near an emergency exit and managed to escape through a torn part of the fuselage. The aircraft, registered as VTANB, had the serial number 36,279 and had been flying for over 41,000 hours, completing more than 700 flights in just the past year. It had been delivered to Air India on January 28, 2014, and was powered by 2 General Electric GE&X 1B67 engines. But this plane had a long history of technical troubles. In November 2021, it had to make an emergency landing in Ankara, Turkey, due to a fuel leak on a flight from London to Hyderabad. It had previously faced battery overheating issues and several incidents of cracked windshields. Each of these problems could cause serious danger. Fuel leaks can shut down engines. Battery heat can spark fires. Windshield cracks can affect cabin pressure or visibility. And yet, despite this worrying track record, the aircraft continued flying. On the day of the crash, passengers recorded broken seat remotes, non-working screens, and poor air conditioning, issues that signaled poor maintenance. According to the logs, the right engine had been repaired in March 2025, and the left one was checked in April 2025. A full inspection had taken place in June 2023, with the next due in December 2025. On paper, everything looked fine, but the plane's past problems painted a different picture. The refueling process began at 12:20 p.m. and took 42 minutes, longer than the average 30 to 35 minutes, likely because it required 100 tons of fuel. The flight, originally scheduled to depart at 1:10 p.m., was delayed. The aircraft finally pushed back at 1:30 p.m., started taxiing at 1:31 p.m., and was cleared for takeoff by 1:34 p.m. Then came the crash, just seconds after leaving the ground. By June 13, 2025, investigators had found the flight data recorder, FDR, on the hostel rooftop. 3 days later, on June 16th, the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, was also recovered. These 2 parts of the black box are essential for piecing together what happened. The CVR holds cockpit audio, pilot conversations, warning tones, and any background alarms. The FDR captures over 1,000 technical details: altitude, engine settings, speed, flap positions, and more. Experts from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, Boeing, GE Aerospace, and other global teams are currently reviewing this data. The FDR was damaged but is still readable. The status of the CVR is still uncertain. No one has officially confirmed where the data is being decoded, but early signs are unsettling. There are still no solid answers. Did a critical system shut down midair? Was it pilot error or something mechanical? Could a hidden flaw in the aircraft's design or upkeep have gone undetected for years? This was the first fatal crash involving a Boeing 787, a model believed to be one of the safest in the skies. But the questions keep growing, and the clues uncovered so far haven't led to clarity. Only more worry. A 17-year-old standing near the airport recorded something strange on June 8, 2025. The plane in his video was the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, Air India Flight I-171. What the video captured is now under investigation. The aircraft looked like it wasn't gaining height properly just after takeoff. It was flying low, and more than that, its landing gear was still down. Another detail stood out. The flaps on the wings were already pulled back. Both these things raised red flags. Flaps are supposed to stay open for the first few moments after takeoff to keep the aircraft stable and help it rise. Closing them too early could cut off lift, causing the plane to sink. As for the landing gear, it's designed to pull in automatically after takeoff, but that needs engine power. If something had gone wrong with the engines, the system might not have been able to pull the gear back. Another camera caught a second angle. CCTV footage from the airport, although blurry, showed the short flight ending in a crash just seconds after liftoff. These two videos became critical. The Boeing 787 is designed to warn the pilots immediately if something like flaps or gear position is wrong. There are visual alarms on the screens and loud sounds that come through the cockpit. But Flight A-Yasite I-171 never showed signs that such warnings were responded to. This raised a question. Were the pilots alerted at all, or did the system not work that day? When the aircraft crashed just 34 seconds after takeoff, it had only reached 625 feet in height. A distress call was made saying there was no thrust. One video showed something rotating underneath the aircraft. That was the ram air turbine, or RAT. It only comes out when both engines and main electrical systems fail completely. The rat turns in the wind as the aircraft moves forward and provides emergency power, just enough to keep flight controls working. That's how the pilots can try to guide the aircraft even if everything else shuts down. But the rat isn't very useful at low speeds and low altitudes. It needs a good amount of air pressure, and Flight AI-171 had just taken off. So there wouldn't have been enough airflow for the rat to help much. The only surviving passenger from the crash said he noticed lights flickering and a strange sound from the side of the plane, which might have been the rat trying to work. Losing both engines during takeoff is extremely rare. In the last 70 years, it has happened only 7 times. But if both engines did stop working on this flight, that would explain why the plane fell so quickly and crashed with such force. This also raised a new question. What could cause 2 engines to fail within seconds of each other? One strong theory being explored is fuel contamination. If the fuel inside the plane had any water, dirt, rust, or even bacterial growth, it could block the fuel lines. That would stop fuel from reaching the engines and cause them to shut down. A similar case happened in 2019, when another Boeing 787 in Japan experienced power loss in both engines because of contaminated fuel. That aircraft didn't crash because it had already reached a higher altitude, giving the pilots more time to land safely. For Flight AI-171, there wasn't enough time. In 2018, a study found that nearly 20% of aviation fuel samples in India had impurities, mainly water and small debris. If even a small amount of bad fuel made it into both engines, that could be enough to cause a complete power loss just after takeoff. Another issue being looked into is electrical failure. The Boeing 787 depends on a system called Variable Frequency Starter Generators, VFSGs. These power almost every major system on the aircraft, including engine electronics, lights, cockpit displays, and flight control computers. If both VFSGs failed at the same time, pilots could lose control of several systems all at once, even if the engines hadn't completely shut down yet. The 787 does have a backup power supply called the Auxiliary Power Unit, or APU, but the APU needs about 90 seconds to start fully and take over control. Flight AI-171 was only in the air for 34 seconds, which meant the APU couldn't help in time. Back in 2013, two separate 787s in Japan had major electrical issues. One had smoke inside the cockpit, and the other had hardware damage. That same year, Boeing grounded all 787s across the world due to fire risk from their batteries. So electrical problems on this model have happened before, and it's possible they happened again here. Another detail under investigation is where this aircraft was built. VTANB, the one that crashed, was made at Boeing's Charleston plant in South Carolina. This factory has had repeated complaints about poor quality control. In 2019, inspections found leftover metal pieces, tools, and even plastic trash inside completed 787S. In one case, metal bits were discovered dangerously close to cockpit wiring, which could cause short circuits or even fires. Between 2009 and 2016, quality complaints were raised about 11 Dreamliners built for Air India at this plant. VTANB was one of them. Still, 6 of those planes were delivered to the airline. In 2024, concerns were raised again when an engineer reported that certain parts in the structure of the 787 could weaken over time, especially after thousands of flights. Boeing didn't publicly accept the claim, but with VTANB now destroyed, those warnings are being taken seriously. Maintenance also plays a big part in this story. VTANB was being maintained by Air India Engineering Services Limited, which is owned by the government. In July 2023, the country's aviation authority found that Air India had skipped 13 important safety checks. Even worse, they had submitted false maintenance reports. After the Tata Group took over the airline in 2022, they tried to fix a lot of internal problems, but the work was still ongoing. In May 2024, nearly 300 employees from Air India Express took sick leave at once to protest long hours and lack of rest. Overworked engineers and technicians can make mistakes or miss problems that might seem small at first, but can grow into dangerous situations. Some signs might have already been visible before the flight. A video recorded by a passenger on flight AI-171 before takeoff showed things inside the cabin weren't working properly. The seat remotes weren't responding. Entertainment screens were blank. The air conditioning wasn't cooling the cabin. On their own, these things might seem like minor annoyances, but together they can also be hints that the aircraft isn't being kept in proper condition. These small signs could be early warnings of deeper problems hiding inside the systems. And if those signs were ignored, the consequences could be deadly. There are still many questions swirling around the crash of Air India Flight AI-171. Some are starting to wonder if the pilots made an error during those final moments. Maybe the flaps were pulled in too early or the landing gear wasn't retracted at the right time. But the Boeing 787-8 isn't an aircraft where such things go unnoticed. It has a built-in warning system that flashes alerts and beeps loudly if the flaps or gear aren't positioned correctly. And both pilots had flown enough to know what they were doing. The captain had logged 8,200 flying hours, and the first officer had 1,100 hours of experience. Even if something went wrong, they would likely have caught it, unless they weren't warned by the system, or the systems themselves failed. The distress message that was sent included the phrases, "no thrust" and "falling," which shows that the crew realized something had gone terribly wrong. But they had almost no time to do anything about it. In most cases, even if one engine goes out, the Dreamliner can still gain altitude. But if both engines shut down just seconds after takeoff, there's hardly any time or space to recover. One possibility being looked into is a bird strike. Ahmedabad has seen regular bird activity around the airport. If a bird hits an engine, it can do serious damage. In 2024, a crash in South Korea that killed 179 people was linked to a bird strike that caused an engine to fail. The Boeing 787's engines are made to handle bird hits. That doesn't mean both engines can survive if struck at the same time. Bird control systems are in place at airports, but no system is perfect. If birds were involved in this case, there would likely be sudden power drops in the flight data. something investigators are checking. But the fact that the Ram Air Turbine, RAT, came out during the crash suggests the problem went far beyond just a bird hitting one engine. What are your views on this? Was it just an accident or a plan to kill innocent people? Do let us know about your views in the comment section below, and for more such amazing videos, do subscribe to our channel.